Hey, welcome to another exciting edition of the Pittsburgh Steelers Show on SteelerFury.com's podcast. I'm your host, Wil Masisak, also known as Accidental Zen on Twitter. You might know me as Bradshaw the Band on the Steeler Fury website. And with me again to talk Steelers football, this time with a little bit more optimistic bent than last week, maybe, are my cohorts of many years. First off, in Pittsburgh Suburban Zone 22, his name is SteelPerch. He's with us. How are you, sir?
Very average, just like the Pittsburgh Steelers.
And also with us from his basement. Actually, he's got his binoculars out. He's looking at his neighbor's house saying, what's he building in there? His name is Dom, goes by FC. He's with us. How are you, sir?
Tom Waits reference. I love it. I'm going to be here a little bit longer than Spencer Rattler with the Oklahoma. So I'm doing well.
Yeah. He went from being the first overall pick in the draft to being benched and probably transferring in a very short period of time, like a month and a half. Amazing. But well deserved on his part. I'm old. I'm the oldest of the gang here, and it's possible that sometimes you get more confused as you get older. So it's possible that I got mixed up about something, but if I'm not mistaken, it seems like the Pittsburgh Steelers finished the game on Sunday. Am I right with more points than the other team? Did that actually happen, Perch? Explain to me what I saw.
Yeah, apparently that is legal.
Yeah, I wasn't sure that they could do that. Would you have any explanation for why this occurred?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all were kind of on the bandwagon of them winning that game. Home game, Broncos wins were against three of the worst teams in the league. The biggest thing to me is just how were they able to run the ball as well as they did right up the freaking gut? When you kind of thought that was going to be the plan to protect Ben all year, they never really committed to it. Maybe it was just a commitment to it. Maybe it was a good personnel matchup where we had, some favorable matchups on the inside of the interior line. I'm not quite. That's the part of it I think is probably merits the most discussion. Is obviously that was going to be the plan going into the season, knowing they need to establish that run and run right up the gut between the tackles. Why did it take 5 weeks to get to that point?
Yeah, I mean, FC, the only thing I come up with on this is it felt like Denver was committed to giving the Steelers a man-to-man situation in the box, meaning they had they kept their box count so that the Steelers offensive line had an easier time picking out targets. Did you see something like that?
How many 3-4 defenses have we played this year?
That's the first one, right? Or no, that's not actually. Did they actually play a 3-4 now?
Yep.
Yeah. So you think that's what it is? They're just used to looking at the 3-4. They know what to do.
Part of it. We had excellent play from our tackles. That's going to be a lot of people are going to have a rough time coming to grips with that. But Dan Brown Jr. was very good. Did Von Miller play?
Yeah, just barely. Had one play where he disrupted a run play, and that was about it.
Got at the Chucks, and Kendrick Green showed why we took him before we took other centers in this year's draft. Covered in a bar fight, he is a tough son of a bitch. There ain't no getting around that. And I think it allowed Trey Turner to play to his strength, which was to read the run game, punch out, get a little bit of help, and then get to the second level, which he still does very well. And I think Kevin Dotson might be getting a little bit healthier, and the offensive line starting to gel. Period.
Yeah, well, hey, we'll take it, regardless of how they achieved it. I think we're happy that it happened. So, Perch, do you think it's a start of something that's possibly sustainable, or did you feel like it was more Denver just was a little bit flat and ripe for the taking?
Yeah, I think there's somewhere in between there. I think that teams the caliber of Denver and Seattle we have coming up, the offense is going to be good enough to, establish some of what they want to do. And, I keep thinking back to Ben's quote from earlier in the year where he said, hey guys, just be prepared that it's going to take us a little while to get used to this. Whether he was speaking to himself, to the new offensive coordinator, to the new plays, to the new battle over who's controlling what, whether it's the offensive coordinator or him and who's got the ability to check out of stuff, or all the new moving parts on the offensive line, the rookie running back. There was a lot of things. I think that he kind of felt, probably rightly so, that this offense would be a lot more cohesive after the bye week than the first, 6 games before that.
Yeah, well, it certainly looked that way. I mean, FC, we're not going to necessarily see a 3-4 defense every week. So how will this offensive line take what they did last weekend and figure out how to adjust it?
Momentum builds good and bad. I mean, I think that that every week since week 2, the offensive line has been a little bit better. And I think that's going to continue. You got, 3 very young players on the offensive line in Green, Moore, and Kevin Dotson. And Chuck's basically the 2-year starter, 2.5-year starter. And you got, Trey Turner, who's been fighting injuries. So it takes an offensive line takes them a while to come together. I think the play calling was slightly better. And you're going to need, the complementary parts to continue to make plays. You're going to need the whites that come in for Juju Smith-Schuster to come in and, morph into Hines Ward with 2 or 3 incredibly great blocks in the run game. You're going to need those types of contributions. You're going to need Zach Gentry to continue to get wins in the run game. Fairmouth was beyond solid in the run game. There's bright spots that can be picked out of every game, and those bright spots, the more they start happening, in games, that's where you start to build that momentum that I originally said. And, this team's already faced a lot of adversity. I understand a lot of NFL teams have, the Ravens have, but how you deal with that, and if you can, just build a us versus the world mentality, that's how teams make the playoffs.
Yeah, well, Perch, let's flip it over for a second and talk about the defensive side for the Steelers. Do you want to talk about the first half where they were damn near dominant, or would you like to talk about the second half where they couldn't stop Denver's offense at all? Take your pick.
I'll talk about the whole thing because I don't think you could separate them. To hold an NFL offense to 6 points for 3 quarters is remarkably difficult to do. And, I kind of want to bury the Steelers for melting down in the last quarter. But and I watch a lot of football, and you guys do too. Every football game you watch, no defense can stop anybody at the end of the game. It just is what it is. I mean, do you see it? Can you point to a team that says, hey, when they're up 14 or 20 points at the end of the game, they hold the other team to 3 and out? Nobody does. Every game is just kind of designed to dwindle down to nothing. I mean, there was a couple of, bad defensive plays. You can't, when you're holding the team down by several scores late in the game, you can't just let somebody get a touchdown on a deep pass. That was kind of a blown coverage. Young guy did that. But, every game that you watch, every defense that you watch, that happens. It just happens over and over where teams can march right down. So watch Lamar Jackson, who's not a great passer, come back 3 games this year in the fourth quarter and run down the field with his arm for the most part, on little checkdowns. It's just kind of how the defense is going in the NFL right now.
Yeah, and it also helps to have the other team lose their top 3 defensive backs and have a kicker that can't kick. Definitely helps your comeback chances. I don't know. I feel like, both offensively and defensively in this game, the Steelers came out with a very smart plan. They executed very well. They got up big, and I can't help but feel that they got a little bit away from what they were doing, that it just felt like the defense played a little softer intentionally, and the offense was not quite as about the play calling there's a really great mixture and a great flow to it for some points of the first half. But when it got sort of later in the game, it sort of really bogged down in terms of what they were attempting to do, not even, talking about the execution. To Perch's point, that's a lot of NFL games. How do you counteract that if you're coaching in the NFL right now. How do you counteract this whole the things, that you can only hold a team down for so long, you can only attack for so long?
I think that I hate to go across sports, but Mike Sullivan 3 years ago had a quote where he said, "Safe is death." And I think the Steelers tried to be safe. If your main issue defensively is the inability to stop the unstoppable, tech-mobile San Francisco 49ers corner route, which Denver basically gained, we'll basically say he scored 2 touchdowns, set up 2 of their touchdowns with, you have an issue, not only with coaching, but with players being dumb. And I would like to lay this at the feet of Butler, but you really can't. It's communication between the players. It was very vanilla, safe play calling, and they almost turtled themselves into having a big problem. So I think that coming off a 3-game losing streak, with as well as the Steelers have played for the first, 45 minutes of game time, I think they just wanted to get through the fourth quarter, and they almost were a little bit too safe.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel like, got to a certain point of the game where they just couldn't wait for the clock to run, which, I mean, I get it. I get they're used to this style of football. I mean, I guess the point I was getting at was, I think this is the style of football that Mike Tomlin prefers. He likes to get this lead early in the game, force the other team to have to chase you, and put yourselves in a position where you can milk the clock a little bit on offense. You can give them underneath routes on defense so that they can use up all their time. But Perch,
100% agree. Point you're making and the point that Perch made. But to defend Mike Tomlin, I think coming in this year, teams leading by 10 points going into the fourth quarter won something like 88% of NFL games over the last 10 years.
Yeah. I mean, but it's still that way.
Tomlin deserves it, but, being up, 2 scores and shutting it down is 80% of the time the smart thing to do. Maybe. Because maybe there's teams that just don't shut it down and we're going to keep on hanging them until there's zeros on the clock.
Right. I don't know, Perch, you didn't, you guys both seem to be less concerned about that aspect of this game, like they did just enough. But, I'd like to remind you that Denver was, whatever they were, 5 or 6 yards away from a score that would have put them in position to tie up the game. So, I mean, you can't feel that great about the strategy. I mean, if they had been up by 9 points when that all happened, of course, I wouldn't be worried about it at all.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing was that the long pass, the long touchdown. You can't give that up. Keep some safety help over the top and make them earn their way down the field 5 and 10 yards at a time. You can't give up a 3, 4, 5 play drive for a touchdown when you're trying to protect a couple score lead. I think that was the biggest thing. Young guy error, but when you dominate a team for 3 quarters and, how many 3 and outs did the Broncos have? It was 6 points for 3 quarters.
Yeah.
Your offense should do enough in those 3 quarters to build a big enough lead that, giving up a couple of cheap scores late shouldn't matter.
Yeah, and they more or less did. Speaking of things the offense did well, what did you make, Perch, of the way they used Chase Claypool in this game, and the way that, now that Juju got injured, and I mean, that was, brutal injury for him. It appeared that in a way it took the Steelers a little bit out of their comfort zone, and they had to do some stuff that they have not been doing lately that ended up being really good things. Do you think in the long run, this getting Chase more involved by bringing him closer to the ball will help?
I don't know that that's going to be the plan. I think that he's kind of a unique outside guy where he's got, that big basketball body where he could box people out. Ben loves throwing the high ball to him. And you want to keep a threat like that on the outside. Do you put James Washington on the inside, who's kind of got some physicality, but he's more of a, stretch the field guy? Do you put Deontay in there because he's so shifty, but he's kind of small? Or do you put one of the tight ends, Ebron or Freiermuth, in that spot, or a combination of all of the above, or even slide a running back out of the formation and make him your third receiver. So I think that's probably what's going to be, what they do going forward. Just a mix of things, because Juju's got that tough physicality, and he's kind of like a fast tight end. He fits that slot role really well. Nobody else they have is really ideally suited for that. So I think it'll be a combination of people. I don't think it'll be Claypool, though. I think anybody but Claypool. That's
funny, because I'm pretty sure that's what they will mainly do, FC. And the reason for that is James Washington. James Washington has, so as far as we've seen in his career, at least, maybe there's something to his skill set that I've not seen yet, but it seems like really the only position he can play is the Y. To be able to be in a position where he can get a free release off the line and mostly run vertical routes or sideline routes. That feels like James Washington's game. I just don't, unless you're going to do the other things that Perch talked about, like putting Ebron out in the slot or using one of the other receivers that haven't got as much time there, I just can't see. If you want to use James Washington, don't you have to move Claypool in?
I think that they're probably going to move all three wide receivers around. What I would hope they would do is, it's going to sound pretty simple. Outside the 20s, I hope that the Steelers treat Chase Claypool and James Washington similar to the way they used Mike Wallace in the past, where I want that vertical threat. I want them running those nines. I want them running vertical routes. But whenever I get into the red and green zone, I would seriously consider him, because he's shown me that he has heart and guts across the middle of the field. I'd run Chase Claypool more on the Hines, what they did with Hines Ward inside the red zone. The tough physical routes, and I think that he has more than enough guts and heart, especially in today's NFL, to run those routes. And don't count out. The one thing that we can say about Colbert and Tomlin is they've consistently found wide receivers. We don't know what they have with Cody White. We have absolutely no idea. What I've seen is a kid that was more than willing to go in there and be a blocker. So that's a great start. And if he can make plays in the passing game, we don't have a single guy that's going to pick up the production of Juju Smith-Schuster and what he brought to this team. We don't have a slot receiver like that. But maybe 6, 7 different guys it's going to take, and that's why football is the ultimate team game. Maybe Cody White picks up a play here. Zach Gentry picks up a play here. Eric Ebron.
Yeah, the thing about Cody White is he doesn't even have to make spectacular plays. He's just got to catch the ball when he's open. You're open and they throw it to you, catch the ball and give effort blocking, and you're going to see playing time. It's like I don't think the Steelers need Cody White to make dynamic plays. They just need him to make the simple plays, right? So we'll see if he can add that to his repertoire this week. Gents, let's move on a little bit and talk about this week's matchup with Seattle Seahawks. A little of the luster of it taken off FC with the injury to Russell Wilson, who won't play. And how about this oddity? This is the kind of thing that FC was going to say, so I'm stealing his thunder probably, but 2 of the 4 longest playing streaks in the NFL were by quarterbacks with I want to say Eli Manning and now Russell Wilson, 2 very long playing streaks, starting streaks. Geno Smith was the quarterback to replace them each time their long streak was broken up. What do you make of this Seattle team coming in with Geno Smith at quarterback?
Does the Seattle team have Chris Carson at running back? I don't think he's going to play again with a neck injury. This is a battle of 2 teams that are the mash unit, because with Juju and all the injuries we have, and I understand Seattle's missing their starting quarterback. They got other injuries. This is going to be an interesting game Sunday night from an injury aspect and the active and inactive list.
Yeah, Perch, I feel like a little bit like the Seattle offense without running without Russell Wilson, who's been really terrific this year. I mean, their offense with Russell Wilson has been so good that it's covered up the fact their defense is absolutely hideous. So now that Russell Wilson is gone, here's a question for you. Do you think they play a different style game in an effort to do what the Steelers try to do to teams often, which is kind of slow down the pace, keep the score lower, try to win a close game?
No, because I think that defense just isn't good enough. Even trying to shorten the game, they're going to have to score a bunch of points. And Geno Smith came in and played pretty well last week. But FC mentioned Chris Carson's been out. DK Metcalf didn't practice Wednesday or Thursday, and he's listed as questionable.
Oh, wow.
I don't know. Maybe he's ready for Sunday. Maybe he's not. But if their offense is Geno Smith and Tyler Lockett, I mean, I think you could probably double up Tyler Lockett pretty good the whole game and force somebody else to try and beat you. And, the Seattle offensive line isn't that good. The defense they have is dead last in the NFL in yards allowed and pretty close to the bottom in points allowed. And just if you look up and down, you're like, all right, who's their pad? They've got, Al Woods. He was the Steelers' backup for years in the middle of their defensive line, and not a lot of pass rushers. Their secondary is pretty depleted. It's just, there's, if that defense holds our offense down, it's time to hang up the season. This is a get right week for our offense for sure.
Yeah, I mean, FC feels like the matchups in the trenches on both sides, the offensive, defensive lines, do favor the Steelers. And it's like if you try to judge the game based on the skill talent on both sides, sometimes you can get fooled. But I feel like the trench battle pretty much tells the tale, does it not?
It does.
It should, anyway.
I like Puna Ford that plays one of the defensive tackles. Al Woods is what Al Woods is. I mean, he's just like a tough guy. Puna Ford is a nice little penetrator up the field, but I feel he's most effective as a wave player, 25, 30 snaps, tops the game. He's just not big enough to hold up. Bobby Wagner, God love him. The mind is there. The body, he just isn't what he once was. I think they way overpaid for Jamal Adams. He's very similar in coverage to Joe Schobert. And that's not to get to Joe Schobert, really, but he's decent in coverage, and I guess Jamal Adams would be decent in coverage for a 3-4 inside linebacker, but I just you stole my thunder with the Geno Smith stat. Who's the last team that you remember that their top 4 corners coming into the year are all gone because Trey Flowers asked for a trade? He's going to be deactivated. Kelly Weatherspoon was expected to be a starter. I think he's about to be cut by the Steelers. So the fourth guy's name escapes me at the time right now. But,
yeah, it's a lot of turnover.
Pete Carroll should look at Russell Wilson and thank him because he got Pete Carroll that gold jacket. If Pete Carroll doesn't win that Super Bowl, his career is looked at a whole lot differently, especially with the issues that he ran into at USC at the end.
Yeah, well, if his only Super Bowl appearance were the one that they gave away to the Patriots, that would definitely have a different feel to it for his career. I don't know, Perch, we always do this. We talk about these matchups, and you're like, okay, this is a week where it ought to be a get-right week for the offense for the Steelers and their defense. The Steelers' defense should be able to handle Seattle with his injury problems and so on and so forth. And then you go out there and the Steelers don't play up to that. I'll ask the same question I ask every time you guys hit me with this is like stacked for a blowout. What will go wrong if Seattle makes a game of this?
Maybe some busted coverages. I mean, they do have 2 pretty outstanding receivers if DK Metcalf is healthy. I mean, I could see either of their receivers busting a coverage or just out physicaling or outspeeding our guys and going, or the offense just, turnovers. We've seen that happen too often where our offense, we can't establish a run. The offensive line doesn't pass block, bends a statue and gets stripped or throws a stupid interception. I mean, these are things we've seen a lot. I mean, any combination of those things can happen and, you can lose game like this.
Yeah, I mean, FC. Were you concerned at all about the Steelers' pass rush not really getting back to the level it was in Buffalo? It feels like in Buffalo they were outstanding, and everything since then has been either totally disappointing as it was without TJ Watt, or more focused on sort of containing the pocket than really making a lot of spectacular plays.
The outside pass rush to a point, but I realize that 2 out of the 3 guys, Highsmith and TJ Watt, are playing injured, and they're not 100%. And they're gunning it out. Third guy, Melvin Ingram, who I really like, I think is seeing a few more snaps than he was expecting, because TJ Watt and Highsmith with the injuries can't play as many as they normally do. So, but what I have been impressed with was, Mondo with a nice sack. I thought that it's not going to show up probably in the box score. It definitely doesn't. But the last 2 weeks, I believe that Hayward has played as good as any defensive lineman in the NFL. You had Isaiah Bucks push in the pocket. They're going to be getting Carlos Davis back. He's a decent inside rusher. It's like I said earlier, other guys got to pick up, for, the injured, TJ Watt that's going out there and playing balls out, but he just doesn't have the explosive, not only first step, but first 2 steps that, helps him close the deal rushing the passer. Same thing could be said for Highsmith. And Devin Bush being in and out of the lineup with injuries, no matter what anyone says, he has a humongous impact on the Steelers defense, because his ability to cover ground and just be an explosive player gives the Steelers just a little bit of oomph. He's a little bit of nitrous oxide for this defense.
Yeah, I mean, I think on first and second downs, he's made quite a bit of an impact. Perch, I noticed something from the beginning of the game on Sunday, and that was that Devin Bush was coming off the field on third downs. And not only that, he was coming off the field, and Robert Spillane was coming on the field. And that makes me think, I watched the preseason, and I'm not really sure I understand the logic of that, but it was working for at least the first 2/3 of the game. Injury related or just weirdness, or like, what do you think?
Is it a green dot thing? Is it injury related? Is it veteran savvy? Is it just they trust him to line people up better and to be in the correct position? Some combination of all 3. I mean, it's tough to say. But one other thing I wanted to point out before that we move on was Ahkello Witherspoon was a healthy scratch coach's decision today. Steelers bye week is next week. Seattle's out a bunch of corners. We got him from Seattle. Anybody think there might be a trade brewing where they said, hey, don't play him this week and trade him back, we'll give you your pick back? I mean, something like that.
Yeah, because I was thinking if there's any way they can, if they don't play him anymore or cut him, that they get the pick back because it's conditional, that would be fine. Just to get the pick back would be great. Because, for some reason he doesn't seem to really hit it off with the Steelers staff, which is unfortunate, because if it felt like last week, especially, they kind of, might have been a week where they used him a little bit. Very strange. What's happened to his career. FC, anything to add on this matchup that we haven't talked about?
My two main concerns would be drop balls by the Steelers offense that could lead to problems. And my main problem defensively, or my main concern, is not accounting for the quarterback scrambles and in the running game. But that would be it.
Yeah. Even at his age, I don't know, how old is Geno Smith now? He's still young enough.
30.
Yeah, he still run the football a little bit. I mean, I could see that. Also, I think this, that Ben is also still getting used to his pass protectors leaving him an escape route. I noticed that the strip sack last week was definitely one where you pretty much don't expect that your left tackle is going to not just run the guy past the pocket, but he's going to run him all the way around to where you're going to normally escape to the right. And I was like, okay, that was a little weird. Like there's a guy here, like, oh my God. So yeah, I think that kind of protecting the ball in the pocket because you don't know exactly where your blockers are going to leave defenders in their wake. So that's the thing I would mention in that regard. Gentlemen, we're going to come back and pick this game. Let's move on to our illustrious pick segment, brought to us by
Chico's Bill Bonds. The Moving the Chains for Jeremy's little podcast. And how about Mark Schropp? Probably the best announcing I heard of a Steeler game in the last 5 years.
Pretty good. Mark Schlereth was sort of had a lot of respect for what was going on the field compared to some of the ex players kind of air their grudges a little bit. They kind of lean, I think, back to all the way back to Bob Trumpy, where it was just I never liked this team, and I'll tell you why they're terrible. I'll point out every mistake they make, but I think Schlereth actually had a lot of appreciation for what the Steelers were able to do on the weekend. And to be fair, Perch, the Steelers played. They showed some, what did you call it? Ordinary offensive shit.
Yes, that was a technical term.
Technical term, exactly. Let's get a couple college picks in. I got a couple for you. I'll start with you, Perch, with the Auburn of Pennsylvania, Pitt playing the Auburn of Virginia Tech. I don't know. Are we going to make a case for Virginia over Virginia Tech probably this year?
It's going to be a pretty good game. That one can go either way. What's the spread on that? Do you have it?
1. Pitt by 1.
Ooh, okay. I'm going to take, give me the home team getting the point. So I'm going to go Virginia Tech to win by, we'll call it. You know what? No, I'm going to take Pitt. I think Pitt's offense, but their passing game has been pretty good. Let's go Pitt 30-27. How about that?
All right. How about you, FC?
I love this week. I actually put in a little bet on them. You don't blow 8-point leads with a minute left, and that's the season killer. I love Pitt this week.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I look more deeply into Pitt because I know that what Virginia Tech did, but I also know that Pitt lost to Western Michigan, and they're two of their big wins on the season where they looked great were against. I'm going to tell you, 2 of the 3 worst teams in the entire FBS in UMass and not New Hampshire that they played. So I'm not sure. What's that?
What about Tennessee and Tennessee?
Yeah, I like that. I'm not sold on them. I think they're Virginia Tech is a tougher place to play than Tennessee. I think. I it used to be. Maybe it isn't anymore.
It's horrible to play there at night, but it's an afternoon game. I research the Shabbos. We'll talk next week.
What do you think about Kenny Pickett as a prospect?
I don't think that he has the NFL future. I think he's a very good college quarterback that's going to end up being a very good coach at some level.
Interesting. Perch, are you with me on my comparison for him, which was, I don't know if you remember this far back, but Tommy Maddox at UCLA, that's the guy that he really reminds me of. Something about his build and his playing style.
Yeah, I could see that. When I think Tommy Maddox, I think more of late career Tommy Maddox in the NFL, with the Steelers when his arm wasn't quite. I think Pickett's got a better arm than what Maddox had when he was with the Steelers. But, young career Maddox, I could see that.
Yeah. Okay, and the other one, of course, is a game that, in terms of the betting line is not seen as being a pretty close game. But I'm wondering if you guys both think so. FC, I'll start with you. That's your Kentucky Wildcats playing, I think what most people think is the best team in the country, the Georgia Bulldogs, 3:30 p.m. on Saturday. I don't tell me why this is a 26-point spread, FC. This is what I want to know, really.
Because it's very possible that Georgia's defense is going to put up 14 points against Kentucky's offense whenever they completely choke out the Kentucky run game. Anybody that watched any Penn State football, and I'm not purchasing someone to go there, Kentucky starting quarterback's a corner backup from Penn State, who I thought was the third best quarterback on their roster. Georgia's defense is something special. They're allowing, on average, 6 points per game. I think they've allowed 30 points through 6 games this year. Incredible defense, incredibly talented. And Georgia continues to win games with their second-string quarterback. I think that spread's too big. I expect it to be like 24-0. So with the spread, I'll take Kentucky, but it's not going to be a close game. It's going to probably be 24-27, maybe 31-0 Georgia. It's the best college defense I've seen since the 2011 Alabama defense. And I actually think they're better.
Yeah, I'll go next. I mean, I don't know. Georgia's defense is outstanding. I mean, really, really good. I'm just not sure. I think Georgia's offense is really that good. You know, Kentucky's defense is pretty good. If this game were at home for Kentucky rather than on the road, like it is, like if it was like, to use your example about Virginia Tech, if it were a nighttime home game like they had last week, I think the Kentucky defense had a pretty good chance to keep this game close against Georgia. I agree with you that Kentucky is probably not going to be able to run the ball that well, but you know, their run game is not really predicated on doing sort of like, you know, like the Steelers run game is sort of running the ball up the middle. It's very diversified. I like their offense a lot. I guess it's a sort of a variation of the Sean McVay offense. And Will Levis is a different looking quarterback now than he was last year. I agree with you that last year, yeah, he would have been a guy that would make a mistake at very inopportune moments if he was under pressure. But I feel like there's a lot of growth in his game this year, just since being he's just first time starting and getting used to it a little bit. So I think Kentucky and the points is a no-brainer. Like I think I would go for that big time. I don't know that they have enough to beat Georgia's defense, but I think this game could be actually pretty exciting. And it reminds me a lot of last week's matchup with Alabama and A&M, where it didn't seem on paper like that game was going to be close at all, but it was just a matchup that was not the easiest matchup, and guys' quarterback played well. So if Kentucky's quarterback plays well in this game, I think it could be a very close game. How about you, Perch?
Yeah, I've been very impressed with Georgia all year. I mean, I was just saying since the first week of the season that they and Alabama were clearly number 1 and number 2, and the rest of the country was just, filling in behind, and that was before Alabama lost. But Kentucky's played really well, and they've got a pretty good defense too. But I've got a hard and fast rule. Anytime I see a game like this that has a ridiculous spread that is way outside the bounds of what I thought. I look at this, I'm like, it's probably about a 10-point game, right? I'm like, 21 points. I never go against that. So if I think it's going to be a close game and the spread's 21, I'm going to take Georgia to win and cover because the bookies know something that I don't.
Yeah, 26.
I've never gone wrong.
26 even.
When the spread is that crazy, that much different than you would think, number 1 versus number 11, 2 undefeated teams playing each other, should be a touchdown game or a 10-point game. The spread's 21. All right, I'm taking the over.
But see, I think this is they make the spread to get bettors to bet, and I would imagine that the average bettor knows Georgia is absolutely fantastic, probably the best team in the country by a wide margin, but they don't really know Kentucky. They haven't probably paid attention to them. So I think for your casual bettor, it would be very hard to get them to bet on Kentucky with any kind of point spread.
5 points since Monday. 5.
Yeah,
that is gargantuan. Whenever they were trying to get the action, they said at 21 and a half. It's at 26 and a half.
Yeah.
Those guys, they keep on building those pretty big buildings out there in Nevada for a reason.
Right on. All right, I'll go with I believe you.
Go Kentucky. I actually would take Kentucky in the points too, but
I'll tell you this. I'll tell you this. If Will Levis, if he performs well in this game, either it makes it a close game or he looks like he doesn't fold under Georgia's defense, he's going to put himself in a conversation to be an early first round pick in this draft. Like that's how close he is now. But if he performs poorly, then I think it'd go back to an afterthought. But it's a make or break game for him. A lot of money on the line for that game, for sure. because, he has the tools. So it's like if you do it against a big opponent in a big moment, maybe, people will start looking at you a little differently. Let's move on and talk about some NFL action. There are NFL games this weekend, believe it or not. It's funny, it's a weekend where there's a lot of the same teams that played last weekend, really kind of good games against tough opponents, are back at it again this week, just swapping opponents. Like, I feel like we're probably never going to talk about, Philly or Carolina ever again, because there's games involving, like, there's the LA Chargers and Baltimore Ravens. Let's start with that, Perch, for you. Do you feel like Baltimore shot the last couple, 2 of the last 3 weeks with these games with very improbable victories, and now playing against the Chargers, you're going to come down to earth? Or do you feel like they're going to ride this, home game to unseat the Chargers as everybody's favorite?
Yeah, I mean, 3 out of 4 weeks this year, the Ravens had to pull off. I mean, if you look at the odds of them winning in the last 5 minutes of the game, they probably had a 5% chance of winning any of those games, and they won all 3. I mean, it's just ridiculous. The comeback they had against the Chiefs, and we saw a couple nights ago, and then that record-setting field goal against the Lions. I mean, that's just ridiculous. The Ravens defense, every game that I watch them, they aren't scary. They got JOA, from Penn State, who's a pretty freakish rookie, but they had so many injuries before the season in their secondary and their running backs, and they just, it's the Ravens. They always find a way to win. They're very similar to what the Steelers do, but I've been really impressed with the Chargers, and, this game's in Baltimore. That's the only thing that gives me any bit of a pause on that, but spread on this one, do you have in front of you?
Yeah, I have the Chargers are a 3-point underdog.
I'm thinking the Chargers. I tell you what, Justin Herbert might be the best of this group of young quarterbacks, guys in the first, second, third year in the league. I mean, he's tremendous. Every game I watch it, his movement, he's got the size, the arm, just everything. He's got it. Big fan of his. So I'm gonna say they go in there, and I bet he shreds Baltimore's defense. I really think so. Probably a high-scoring game, something like 30-26. I'll take the Chargers.
Yeah, it feels like Baltimore's defense last week. I think I'm left with that lingering stink of what they look like against the Colts, who I don't think are particularly good on offense. And the Colts seem to have really no problem with Baltimore's defense. So until very late in the game, or their field goal kicker missing kicks. So yeah, I kind of feel the same way, that the Chargers offense is really going to roll in this game. How about you, FC?
I would hate to correct Perch. Herbert is definitely the best of these young quarterbacks.
Better than Patrick Mahomes?
How about this? Right now, you told me I have to pick between the two of them. I think I might take Herbert.
Now, I'm qualifying mine as the first 3 years. I mean, I think, if you throw Josh Allen in that mix, who's, more, I almost consider Mahomes and Allen to be more mid-career at this point. I'm talking about that group of the 3, first 3 year guys.
I'll go out there on the limb and I'll say that I'll take him definitely over Josh Allen, and I think that I'll take him over Patrick Mahomes. Because there's something that Herbert has that I don't believe that Kelsey nor Josh Allen have, and that is Keenan Allen's probably the 5th best player on the Chargers offense. I think Keenan Allen would be, at minimum, the 4th best on Kansas City. If you want to know the 4 offensive players that I think are better than Keenan Allen, I'd take Herbert, Mike Williams, Aaron Eckler, and Slater, which I'm ashamed to admit. Rashawn Slater, the rookie left tackle, in front of Keenan Allen. I think that there are better NFL players at this moment, and I think Keenan Allen is a very good NFL player. Buffalo, I still think they're a mirage to a point. Diggs is a great player. Dawson Knox is a good player. You know what you're going to get out of the other wide receivers there. And Kansas City, I really question a lot of Mahomes' decision-making under pressure. And he has not been a player that's had to face a lot of pressure because he's had, both the Williams, who are now starters, for different NFL teams that snuck out. You got to remember, that first Super Bowl MVP that Patrick Mahomes won is a bunch of horse shit. He should have been given to Williams, the running back that basically accumulated 60% of Patrick Mahomes' yards on screen passes and broke 3 or 4 tackles and won them a Super Bowl. I was right there with you, and I still think Patrick Mahomes is special. I still think he may end up being one of the 10 greatest quarterbacks of all time. I view Herbert the same way, without the turnovers and with a bigger body and with a similar type arm and maybe better accuracy and a better team around him.
Well, and he's not thrown across his body to the middle of the field late. I mean, that's the thing that's like, if you can do that and pull it off, everybody thinks you're, wow, what a player. And if you don't do it and you get picked, then you're terrible, But all I'll say about Justin Herbert is I actually agree with you. I think he made a big step forward this year compared to last year. Has really impressed me the way he's played this year in this sort of, closing game situations. But I think that the way I measure young quarterbacks like this is, like Ben's 2006. It's like, how do they handle everything goes wrong, and they have the league figures them out for a couple of weeks. How do they come back from that? How do they evolve and adjust to what defenses are doing for them? And that's the thing we don't know yet that about Herbert. How will he evolve when teams adjust to what they're doing and take it away? So I suspect he'll do well, but I also think it's like we're now looking at him in the peak era of his initial run before teams have really broken it down to like what his weaknesses are.
Well, let's order a Buick, an appendectomy, a concussion, and a broken TV out to Justin Herbert and see how he bounces back from that.
It might require all of that, yeah, exactly. But I mean, if you had said in year 2 for Patrick Mahomes that he's, wait till he has a down period and let's see how he adjusts to it, and people will be like, oh, he's never going to have a down period. He's setting every record has ever been, So unexpected things happen, especially at the quarterback position, I guess is what I would say.
Here's the thing, though. Justin Herbert, I don't want to use the word mechanical or robotic, but he doesn't make those mistakes. And if you remember, he had a ton of adversity his last year at Oregon. He came out of that draft process after having all those problems at Oregon. Still is a lot of people's number 1 quarterback. I just think there's something special about the kid.
Well, he's got one big advantage working for him. He has an unbelievable coach.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, I think that's a big deal. That certainly helped Patrick Mahomes, and it definitely helps Lamar Jackson, and it definitely helps Josh Allen. So it's quite a coincidence now that these sort of the young, really up and coming quarterbacks who are taking the league by storm, that they all have that in common. Andy Reid's possibly the worst coach out of the 4 of them. So, but he's, I think he's a pretty good offensive coach, obviously.
Also have coaches that just undeniably support their quarterbacks. That will go to war, will fist fight you if you badmouth their quarterback.
Yeah, and they're featuring them. They're not apologizing for them with the way they call plays.
Great.
Let's just quickly, Kansas City and Washington. It's a sneaky game. I'll go first with it. I think it's a sneaky game because obviously, it's a must-win really for Kansas City if they have hopes of, the division and trying to make some noise in the season. But I feel like Washington, if there's a formula to play against the Chiefs right now, it's rush 4, get pressure with that, take the top off their offense, and then have somebody kind of follow Travis Kelce around. And that's more or less, it's like, hey, if you want to run the ball, your quarterback wants to run the ball, you want to throw it to Anthony Thomas or whoever their other guys are, Josh Gordon coming off nowhere, then that's fine. We're going to let you do that. So the thing is, Washington is really built for that. They might even be more built for that than the defense that the Chiefs saw last week with the pass rush front 4 that they have. I have a feeling that this is kind of a dangerous game for the Chiefs. They're a 10-point favorite, and I know Washington's got problems. Their quarterback's young, and they got injuries and blah blah blah. But I have a feeling that this could be quite a test for Kansas City. I don't know. I think 10 points is too much. I like backdoor cover for Washington. How do you feel about this, FC?
Chase Young and Josh Sweat got to do better rushing the passer. I don't expect much from Jonathan Allen rushing the passer. I mean, those two and Payne, they're there to two-gap and to kill the run. I just think that I think Kansas City's actually going to throttle Washington this week. I understand your viewpoint. I don't think that the Redskins are going to have an answer for Travis Kelce. I'm not sure if Tyreek Hill is going to play with a quad injury, but I think Travis Kelce on Jonathan Bostic, that could be ugly.
Well, don't forget, Jonathan Bostic is one of those guys that looks great when he leaves the Steelers. Perch, how do you see this game?
I was pretty excited about Washington's defense at the end of last year. They got a lot of good pieces, and they were really tough, and they just haven't looked quite the same this year. And I just don't think they have enough on offense to keep up with the Chiefs. The Chiefs got to, have one of those moments where they get their season together and kind of get on a roll. So I think the Chiefs actually win this one pretty big by 2 touchdowns.
All right. How about one last one? And that's Arizona at Cleveland. Same sort of deal in this game. Arizona, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, they haven't lost a game. And is it the 3 points now? The Browns are favored by FC?
I got it at 3.5.
Yeah. So, I mean, tell me, FC, what do you think about this game?
Unfortunately, with no Chandler Jones, who's going to be out with COVID, I think Cleveland's going to be able to run the ball, control the ball enough, and control the clock enough to keep Kyler Murray off the field. And I think they're going to win probably like 31-24. Arizona's defense is really good whenever they're up and they force you to pass, but ball control offenses, I think, are going to end up giving them a problem. They are undefeated. I'm going to take Arizona in the 3.5, but I think the Cleveland Browns will win the game by 3.
How about you, Perch?
Yeah, I've been changing my opinion on this one a little bit. I think I read something today that the Cardinals have another player and a coach, I think, that are going to be in COVID protocol now, too. Who knows how that thing shakes out by the end of the week. But, what we saw from Baker Mayfield is if he gets down and they have to throw, it's not, that's not his thing. He's at his best when that team can run for 200 yards on you and he could use his play action. That's the kind of quarterback he is. So if the Cardinals can, jump out to a lead and put some pressure on him with no Chandler Jones, it's really going to hurt a bit. I don't know. I just have a feeling that, things usually come back to the law averages over time. The Cardinals don't look like a 6-0 sort of team to me. They're good, but they're not great. I think that the Browns end up squeaking one out here. I think, we'll call it 30-27 Cleveland.
Yeah, missing Chandler Jones is definitely a big deal. It makes me reluctant to pick the Cardinals, but I will say that, I feel like their quarterback, Kyler Murray, is a sort of an antidote to someone like Myles Garrett. It's the how do you deal with a situation where you got this real quick edge rush coming at you? Well, you got a guy that can get out of dodge. So he's not just capable of getting out of dodge. You can make plays while he's out of dodge. So one thing about the Browns, if Chandler Jones were healthy in this game, I would say it like this: I think the Browns, if they face a team that is not going to give up 4 rushing touchdowns, meaning you can run the ball against us, but when we get into the red zone, we're going to pack it in, and you're not going to run the ball down our throats, between the 20 and the goal line on every series, right? If you have that, if you're good, your defense is at least that good, and you got a quarterback that's better than Baker Mayfield, you got a shot in the game. That's just the formula. Now, the Browns last week were up. They were up by 1 point late in the game. Their defense had just given up 2 touchdowns. They had 3rd and long. And you know what they did? They handed the ball off. I mean, that tells you right away what your coach thinks of your quarterback, is that, in a situation where you really need to move the chain so you can try to get some points and run the clock to save your defense, and you run the ball. So he thought they had a better chance on 3rd and 10 or 11 handing off. So I would not rule out Arizona winning this game. And they very, very well might cover that 3.5. I guess that's what I'll say. Anyway, enough about all these other teams in the league. We got a 5-star matchup again because we got a Pittsburgh Steelers team looking for a winning streak, hosting the Seattle Seahawks. I'm going to start with you, Perch. Give me some rays of sunshine from SteelPerch.
I think I already did before. The defense for Seattle's awful. Coming from the West Coast, it's going to be a night game, so it's not a 1:00 game. But
Correct.
I just, the starting quarterback is out. Their defense is terrible. The only ray of sunshine I can give you is the Steelers have beaten the Seahawks by a score of 21-10 twice in the last 15 years. I think this will be the third time that happens.
Gotcha. FC, how about you?
I'll take the Steelers 23-16. Not going to be pretty. Steeler games generally aren't. As you said, Mike Tomlin likes to play and keep things close to the vest. So I'll take the Steelers 23-16. Deontay Johnson, Najee Harris will make enough plays. Pat Freiermuth with the touchdown.
Yeah, I think this is it's a night game. It's the Steelers at home with Ben and Mike Tomlin, and it's an NFC opponent. All of those things are, usually earmarks of a week where the Steelers figure out a way to win the game and probably win comfortably. But I don't know what comfortably is for them right now because, don't know if their offense is capable of duplicating the effort that they gave last week. And I'm not sure if their defense is, capable of, shutting a team down for the whole game. And I also think that, if you're Seattle, you can understand what their game plan is going to be. Their game plan is going to be all week. The coach is going to tell them, hey, you're undermanned, your quarterback's out. This other team thinks, they got nothing to worry about. And, what kind of a football player do you want to be? What kind of team do you want to be known as? Let's go out there and show them, which might work for a little while in the game. And so I think can have to withstand whatever it is that they come out with emotionally early and figure out a way to put them away. It's the putting away part that concerns me more than anything else in this game. I'll call it a Steelers blowout 23-16. By the way, 23-16 is the score we use whenever we have no idea what score to say. It's been a staple of the podcast for years, just letting you in on a little secret. Anyway, I do think, I'll let's put it this way. I would be more surprised about the Steelers losing this game than I was at any of their three previous losses. So take that for what it's worth. Maybe I'm out to lunch or a homer. People tell me I'm a homer. Speaking of homers, last word from you, FC.
Peggy two, since I didn't get one last week. On October 14th, 1991, one of my best friends in the world, Melissa, I'm not going to say her last name, hung and killed herself. October is Mental Health Awareness Week. Anybody out there that thinks that they have a problem or a friend or a loved one has a problem, don't be afraid to ask. Second thing, if you give blood, and you should give blood, have them check your bone marrow. You never know that when you could be the match and you could save somebody else's life. Other than that, go Steelers.
Wow, we have an outstanding public service message, and I apologize that I shut you out last week, FC. I didn't mean to.
Oh, you're cool, man. No big deal.
Perch, how about you?
Well, the only way to follow that would be NCAA, quit calling targeting. I hate it. It annoys me.
I agree.
The only one who can enjoy that would be Roger Goodell, whose middle name is Clueless Anti-Football Pussy, from what we have been told. And that's all I have to say this week. Had the class join up a little bit before we hang up the phone here.
Right on. Well, whatever I'm going to say is going to be infinitely less meaningful than FC, and probably not as much of a laugh as Perch. But I will go along with what you have to say. By the way, in the Kentucky game last week, the officials were so concerned about whether there was targeting on a play near the goal line that they actually missed the fact that it was a touchdown and never corrected it. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think it's way too much time and energy causing officials to miss the basic stuff they're supposed to do in the game. So, anyway.
We got to talk about this double punt next week.
Double punt.
Oh, that was awesome. The way he caught the punt after it was
the
blocked
double
and he punted
punt.
again.
I got to say, I've always fond of saying that I've officiated for many, many years. I actually forgot that was legal to do, to punt it again, since the ball didn't cross the line the first time. So I got to give a shout out to the officiating crew in that game who actually managed to know what the rules were and get it right on the first try. Amazing. Never happens that way. All right, gentlemen. why don't we set up a time to talk next week after another Steelers victory, if they're allowed to win another game. SteelPerch FC, Dom, appreciate you guys. Shout out to Jeremy Kohlman from the Extra Point in Denver, who wasn't with us this week, but also shout out to all of you who listen and press the like button and subscribe here on Facebook or on YouTube or on the podcast app of your choice, because I am Wil Masisak, a.k.a. Bradshaw the Ben, and Accidental Zen from the Pittsburgh Steelers show on the SteelerFury.com podcast saying, go get them, Steelers.
Here we go.
Steeler Fury.